Hello, I'm John Dunbar, former mayor of Yountville.
Now I'm Alfredo Pedroza, a farmer.
And I'm Jeri Hansen, president and CEO of the Napa Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks for joining us as we talk about politics, people, and whatever else Jeri wants to.
Of course.
That's right. I came to the right place.
You should know better.
I know.
Basically, your life.
Helping the core business sector be successful.
1990, when these conversations started ad
I'm going to pay
nauseum.
$1 into a tax. Like, what's my return on investment?
Little double dip.
Well, no, it's not a double
That's
dip.
what gives me the confidence that we're not going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Well, hold on, John. I feel like I want to start this segment. I feel you're conflicted right now.
I'm already drinking.
Yeah, we should. So I feel very honored to have Jeri Hansen here. I got to officiate your wedding. I still remember you teared up. You did.
Absolutely.
Of course, my words were so powerful. Some would say beautiful and big, but I digress. But Jeri was a friend before you were, so I feel kind of honored to have Jeri
this
here.
is a good start.
It is. We were
For me.
we were kind of had a little tiff before, so I feel like I just want to talk to Jeri right now.
It's okay. I understand.
You should. You have to. You're.
I know, walk
you
into the
share a
room.
house.
Welcome to public comment.
Yeah.
I walked into the room and it was like, oh, my
Mom and dad
are
are fighting.
fighting.
Yeah, but it's a good
You guys are
fight.
like brothers. You're so feisty.
Well, he's much older, but
He's your older brother, yes.
so you run the Chamber of Commerce, and,
Yep.
and I've always been impressed with what the Chamber of Commerce does. And I remember Travis, a good friend of mine, that ran it, and then they hired you. I'm like, what an incredible decision! But you're leading an organization at a time when it's so critical, right? Businesses are hurting, and you're front and center to it, right? So for the people that don't know what a chamber, because people remember Chamber of Commerce from like day of mom and dad,
Yeah.
like you do mixers and you have flowers and ribbons.
Mhm.
You're so much more than that. So like, give us, John.
So
Me
this
and
is
Jeri are talking right
this
now.
is
John.
why I usually do the start of the podcast, because you don't remember that we like to find out a little backstory
Well, that's
about
what
our guests.
I'm leading into that. Like
This is fun.
yes, John. Wait your turn.
By the way, this is the first time we've ever had a guest drinking rosé instead of our cab,
You know why?
because you want to.
Because I do a little thing called What I Want.
Yes, Caleb. I want a mute button next time, like to mute John. So Jeri,
I have one at home.
Feel free. Go
you
ahead.
were interrupt.
Go ahead.
You interrupted.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What
Question.
I'm
is
gonna
a
lean
Chamber of
back on
Commerce?
the
What
Chamber
is
of
a Chamber of Commerce? You're totally right, though. So our chamber has been around since 1889. And it was more organized after the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. So we have been around for a really long time. We have a lot of history in the community. I think when you
I
say...
was not here at that time. I'm just getting out in front of you.
We were thinking it, John.
I didn't think it. I didn't think that. But it's not your grandpa's chamber anymore. And I think chambers of commerce have a standing and a reputation in communities. People, they're familiar. People know what they are, but they are known for mixers and ribbon cuttings and all of those social business things. But chambers are having to evolve, just like businesses are. And in particular, our chamber is moving in the direction of economic development. And now I will say we're moving in the direction of economic development because we are defining that is what we do.
Yeah.
Chambers always do economic development. It just comes in different forms. Economic development is business development. It's workforce. It's business to business connections. It's getting barriers out of the way for businesses who want to build or grow or locate here.
Yeah.
So we're just defining it.
So how does the Napa Chamber differ from the other chambers in the Valley? Because I know that there are some very significant differences.
Yeah, so every city in the Valley has a Chamber of Commerce, including you've had Alonso Corona on here, the Hispanic Chamber is countywide. But that doesn't mean that we are bound to our jurisdiction. So the Napa Chamber of Commerce is housed. We live in the city of Napa, downtown. We own a building. But our members come from Valley-wide and even outside of the community, like Sacramento International Airport is a member of the Napa Chamber of Commerce. The one thing that is distinct about the Napa Chamber is that we are the only chamber in the Valley that does not receive tourism dollars. So we do not receive the TID, the Tourism Improvement District dollars from our city. That is the Downtown Association, comes through the city and the TID committee, contract with the Downtown Association. Well, not contract, but they work with the Do Napa brand. So I'm not sure if that was by accident or by design, but we do not serve the welcome center function like the other chambers do in their cities. we have a great welcome center here that Visit Napa Valley runs not 3 blocks from our office.
beautiful.
And so we help people when they walk in, but we also send them down to the one with all the pretty kiosks and the recommendations.
So on economic development, Jeri, though, like when people talk about that, they think about government, right? Like it's something housed in government. And I know you've been working closely with the city of Napa. So when you say economic development, like what does that mean for someone that lives in Napa or has a business in Napa?
So back to what the definition of economic development is, it's everything. And the reason, one of the things that we're going to talk about, I know, is the economic development strategy for the Napa region that the Napa Chamber took on. And someone said, why did the Napa Chamber take this on? And I said, some days, I don't know, but it was big. Some little history, and I know you're familiar with it. The Napa Valley Economic Development Corporation, we had an economic development entity in Napa County for 20 some odd years plus. It was like 82 or 4 that it formed. It dissolved in 2009 and nothing took its place. So there was no private sector business-led economic development entity to help work with the public sector and governments working on economic development to drive those and advance those initiatives around business retention and expansion and attraction. So economic development is housing, it's infrastructure, it's workforce development, it's permit streamlining, it's health and human services, it's roads, it's streets, it's, whatever. I think if you look at anything through the lens of economic development, it will make sense.
Look, I think you're right because, John and I have talked about how the state is so messed up. And a lot of it, I think we focus on the state issues, right? How I think California is driving people out. But a lot of it is local stuff, right? And how do you have an advocate at the local level that is talking about like how hard it is to run a business,
right?
And the pressures that people are facing every day, whether you run a landscaping business or you run a music festival or you run a waste company or a coffee shop. And I think sometimes people expect their elected officials, and it works, John, like when they have people like you and I in government that try to help and do good. But when you don't,
right?
I think a lot of pressure falls on like chambers of commerce.
Sure.
But I think the question I would have for you is the Napa Chamber of Commerce prepared to fill that void, Jeri, that I think exists in Napa right now?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have taken this on. Yeah. And when I first joined the chamber in 2023, took over from Travis, who was also a friend of mine. And he
lives
was
in his
my
cave now.
successor.
I talk to him once in a while.
Yeah. And I was, he left an organization to me that was in really good shape. So this was the next natural step.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that there is a huge gap. What I will say is that there is a gap that we are filling, but we are also less than a gap filler and more of a bridge builder. So there are things happening in the economic development division for the city of Napa that we are lining with.
So you really think the city, and this is a last question, I'm not casting judgment, but you think the city actually cares about economic development?
They do. They have a staff of 3 that are wonderful, very creative. Like they're doing local like culinary arts accelerators and makers accelerators, and they have a business concierge navigator program.
Wow. If
you have a permit problem or you have something's in the way, they will help knock on doors for you to the right people within their offices and say, okay, how do we get this moving? And so that's where we work together too, is oftentimes someone will come to me and say, oh, I'm, have an issue with this. So we work together. I send them to the city and say, let the staff know at economic development and we can help navigate that. And they do a really excellent job. They're practical and creative at the same time, as much as you can be creative in city government, but we align with them on our plan that we are working through and implementing, just starting implementation phase. But the thing about it is that we are good partners because we are not constrained by the city limits. The city of Napa staff is. They can only work on things that are within the boundaries of their jurisdiction, whereas the chamber and our other partners, we can be a little bit more nimble. We can go beyond that. We're not constrained by how we're funded through the city. So if something comes up and someone's interested in locating out in the airport industrial area, for example, the city staff wouldn't be able to navigate them through that process, but we could because we don't take city funds.
Yeah, I just, sorry to interrupt, John. I know you have something very valuable to say, but I will just say this and then it's your turn. But I remember in 2014 when we had the earthquake, right? And businesses were hurting. Right. And I remember people were trying to figure out how to reopen safely. And it was just like the city was not prepared to be that resource, right?
Right.
It was more like, how do we say no versus how do we say yes?
Mm-hmm.
And our response is like, look, they're trying to keep people employed. They're trying to pay people.
Yeah.
And they're trying to open safely. But there wasn't that incentive. There wasn't that push. So and again, as someone from the outside, not knowing the inner workings of it, what you're telling me is refreshing, because I do think businesses need that support, right? Because it is complicated to go through the process today, and they need an ally. And I think we haven't had that before.
Or even where it's a connector, right? To where to look and who to ask. And sometimes I don't have the answer, but I know the person who does.
Yeah.
And so it's just, if you are having an issue, there are resources and people to help you. You just have to ask the question first, and then we can figure out where, door number 1, 2, or 3 to get you through.
You brought up the Napa, the Downtown Association.
Yeah.
If you can explain the differences and similarities, you mentioned a couple different agencies or organizations that kind of overlap and interconnect with the chamber. But can you explain maybe how that dynamic came to be and how it works? And because my understanding is the Downtown Association has a very specific footprint for downtown.
Yes.
And it was drawn out a certain way. And that's the organization that gets the funding through the city, passed through that they then use for certain, whether it's street beautification or other events like the Napa Table, where it's raising money to support their membership. But then outside that footprint, is that where the chamber comes in, or is that where a different organization takes over that responsibility? So it's a tricky little dynamic. Maybe you can
I would
clarify.
say the answer to that is yes, and kind of. So the Napa Chamber is a membership organization. It's voluntary. We are a coalition of the willing, and it is our revenue streams, our membership dues, and our events and our programs. And then we also have a 501c3 foundation that's a partner to us. We are not connected. They need to remain very distinct because there's a separate mission for the 501c3, which was started in 2006. So the chamber is a voluntary dues-based membership association. The Downtown Association was started in, I think, the early 70s. It is a merchants association. It is a downtown improvement or a business, merchant, a business improvement district. They are funded by a 40% fee on top of a business license fee in the city footprint that is outlined as the downtown footprint. Anything outside of that footprint as a business doesn't pay the 40% on top of business license fee.
How much is that fee? What does it generate, Jeri?
I don't know what the
40%
total
of what?
is.
40%
Well,
of
your business license
the
fee is
40%
based on what
and then
your
it's 40% more of
40%
that business
on top.
license.
So if your business, I'm just going to use math because easy math. It's $100, say, which it's not, but
it's
it
$40.
depends on what you're. Yeah, so the
$140.
extra $40 goes to the Merchants Association, which is specifically charged with activities, events, promotions, specifically for the downtown. So you are paying to get the benefit. Businesses,
little double dip. Little double dip.
Well, no, it's not a double dip because who's double dipping?
On the way out for a business.
Oh, well, they're part of, but they also get the benefit. Okay, so that's one. Then there's the property-based.
I'm being constrained right
there's
now.
the
For your benefit, I'm just
property
gonna tell you.
business improvement district, which is a assessment on property. So the business owner pays the fee for the business license fee.
The 40%.
The 40%. The property owner then has its own assessment on square footage, and that goes to the property-based business improvement district, which does the wayfinder signs, the potted plants, the ambassadors, the anything infrastructure related, that beautification. And so in some cases or not, I don't know exactly if this is how often it happens, but it's typically passed on and then through to the tenant. So the tenant might be paying both things. Then there,
He can't control himself.
I don't know this building. This building is not in downtown
then
Napa.
there is the tourism improvement district, which is totally separate. That comes from the 2% collected of the 13%, when you overnight stay in a hotel, 2% is collected in the city of Napa, hotels and B&Bs and lodging. That 2% is then split up. 25% goes to the city of Napa. 75% goes to the Napa Valley Tourism Corporation to manage the management district plan for the entire county, the Napa Valley Tourism Improvement District.
And each city and town does that.
It's a kind of return to source type of thing. So the 25% is given to the city of Napa, and that is controlled by the city of Napa and a tourism improvement district committee made up of lodging partners in the jurisdiction. So then they get to decide how to use that money. So Lighted Art Festival and things that are happening. It's their whole goal is to bring people to put heads in beds and overnight stays to generate more of that. So the chamber fits in a way. I mean, we are not tourism, and we don't specifically focus on the downtown because although we have many members who are downtown, they join the chamber for different reasons than the event stuff or whatever it might be, because the chamber focuses on membership development and engagement. So what do you want to know about? What's keeping you up at night? How can we help you? Civic engagement and advocacy and economic development. Those are the three. And the business to business connections really is where it's happening.
I just have so many thoughts, John.
So I know I talked really fast, but that's
some I'm going to say for the porch to not associate with, Jeri here. But I will say, fixing flower pots and things should be the city's responsibility. It's just my opinion only, right? I guess where my focus goes is I see how hard business owners work, right? I see the actual owners in the business hustling, trying to survive. And there's all these taxes. And I just think about accountability though, Jeri, of like, if I'm going to pay $1 into a tax, like what's my return on investment? And I think that's a fair question for business owners to have because it is getting harder, right? And where I'm going to take this conversation for the benefit of all of us is, we've been reading some of the press around Napa's too expensive and all these things. And that does concern me, right? About Napa and the affordability, because I think you want Napa to be an incredible community. And I think we are. So like before the Wonderful Chronicle, which I'm not a big fan of, or the local paper, look, we have to recognize we've become something to write about. Like, and we should be proud of that, right? So like, thank you, Chronicle, for writing about us. But what they're writing about it maybe isn't the best. So what they're hitting us on is the lack of affordability. So like as Chamber of Commerce, like how does that rise up? Because you have a dynamic board, you have some good people on your board. How does that conversation come up around affordability and having, visitation? And I know Lindsay works very closely with you. How is that something you're all talking about in today's business climate?
So we're talking about it in a couple of different ways. Yes, at the board level, because, as an organization, how do we move the organization through our priorities to help with that? But that is also why we took on the economic development strategy for the region. And I have an economic development committee made up of 21 people from various sectors: real estate, finance, airport, winery, hospitality, tourism, workforce, nonprofit. We've got a lot of minds thinking. And what we are focused on is building on the sectors that are already strong here. We have ag, we have wine, we have tourism, but we also know that we need to diversify and we need to figure out what is it that we can do within those strong sectors to go, what I'll say, vertical. So what are some layers that we can add that adds high quality jobs, but also what other sectors are we intentionally attracting here that fit here? So we're not looking to be, as one of my committee members said, the Amazon Fulfillment Center capital of California. What are some things that we can draw to us? Healthcare, finance, airline, finance. The wellness sector is taking off. Wellness, arts, makers, light manufacturing. The state of California has it's called Jobs First Blueprint, and they are arranging their thoughts around things that they want to strengthen, accelerate, bet on. And it's kind of it's organized by, what we're sitting on right now, but then what are we looking forward at? And they're looking at aerospace and ag tech and life sciences. So how can we line up with that? Because there's some resources behind it, but what fits our community and what are we drawing here so that we can diversify that economy? But the very first thing that we contracted with Beacon Economics to put the strategy together for us and did all of the data and the research. One of the things why are people driving out of Napa County right now? What sectors and jobs are they going to? And is that something that we could draw here and have it here? So we already have the talent in place. But the first thing we need to do if we expect to grow in any sort of way is that we need to figure out the housing conversation or nothing is going to happen.
I feel like I want to revisit.
And it needs to be the right kind of housing. It needs to be the housing stock that we need for the workforce that we have now, not the one we thought we had in 1990 when these conversations started ad nauseum because they've been going on for that long. So housing is one of the key pieces of our economic development strategy, and our implementation is going to put people together around the table around these growth areas in our strategy: economic development, innovation and diversification, workforce development, housing and infrastructure, and climate resiliency and wildfire. And we're going to put people at tables that may not be at tables normally together. And we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to have difficult conversations with friends. And we're going to get through this, because if we don't, lights out.
Yeah. So I wanted to
that was probably too tragic. Not lights out, but we're going to be status quo. And we know that we can't be. We're not dynamic. We're not drawing young families. So
I wanted to drill down a little bit more on that, because I'm glad you brought up Beacon Economics and Christopher Thornburg and his economic forecasting, because a lot of what you just said sounds new, different, unique, and very beneficial. I don't hear any other chambers talking this way. And, to oversimplify, maybe it's not all about social mixers and parades. It's about helping the core business sectors be successful. And you have been reaching out to experts in these areas that don't live here, that you go find. So how is it you are understanding where to go to find the right partners, and how do you apply them here locally then? Because when you get kind of generic, economist forecasts that you can cut and paste into any community. Remember Dr. Thornburg specifically talking about don't diversify just to diversify, but do it thoughtfully. So how do you bring all of the resources you're talking about in the kind of specialty knowledge and then apply it? Because like I said, it sounds like it's a new effort in this
Yeah. So
city.
I just put myself in places where I'm going to be with people who are doing this in other communities. And I ask a lot of questions. I just got back from the California Association of Local Economic Development conference in Southern California. I was probably one of the few folks there who was not in economic development in a jurisdiction or a corporate, like an entity of city staff. And I have to tell you that it exceeded my expectations, because I was going down there wondering, am I just going to sort of sponge? I'm just going to listen and take, write some good ideas down and maybe get some contacts. I took notes in every session. I was the dork who raised my hand and asked the questions. You remember those like re-entry students when you were in college, and it's like you're hungover and then there's like an older person in there and you're like, why are you asking these questions? That was kind of me. But the good thing about this group is that they were all dorks like me, and they were so excited to share. And so I took a lot of notes about tapping into resources that are available to our community to help us continue to advance this strategy. But I just go places where I'm going to find people. I mean, I made a presentation to the California Chamber of Commerce about this, my colleagues from across the state. And how did I do it? And why did I do it? And sometimes the answer is like, I don't know. But if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And the other chambers are, what I've said is, we didn't do a countywide effort because I didn't have the capacity to do that. From a staff perspective or resources, we got this sponsored by local partners, Redwood Credit Union, Visit Napa Valley, the County of Napa, the City of Napa, the Gasser Foundation, RSA Plus, Comcast were behind this plan. But I just said, you know what? We've done this work. Take it. and, find and replace the word Napa with the word whatever your town is, and pick and choose what you want and create your own. And so, but I put myself in places where I'm going to get answers. I'm going to get ideas. I'm going to get inspired. I'm going to get challenged. And also, how do we connect to resources that are available to help us so that we're not tapping into our community to continue to pay for this?
Well, you've done well, though, Jeri, and you deserve credit for this. You figured out how to build a team, though, right? Of when you mentioned some of the names like Brett of Credit Union, Brett is solely on board, right? The CEO, you have the Bottle Rock folks and others. You've done a great job of tethering that together, which allows you to go into those spaces that we haven't gone before. Because I do think that's part of the problem, right? Is we're trying to solve the same problem because, I do disagree with you slightly, John. These problems have been here. But what the Napa Chamber of Commerce is doing, what they're doing different today is they're approaching it differently than what we've done it before, right? But that requires an acknowledgement, right? Because if you remember, during the pandemic, we had a Zoom with a few folks of like, how do we court Facebook? How do we court all these other people?
I remember on those.
It was economic development. And what we quickly learned is like, you have to be intentional to what you shared. So, God damn it, let's be intentional then. But then that requires discipline and intentional strategy, which is what you've talked about. That's what gives me the confidence to say, we're not going to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
We can't.
Agree. But that's part of
Visit Napa Valley's got a tourism strategy for external. What we were missing is the same type of strategy for internal, for our own business community. Totally and so what we are doing is actually focusing inward and putting the pieces together and the people together to start solving for X on some of these issues. And they have been around for a long time, but everything we've talked about, housing, infrastructure, permitting, all of that, what hasn't been there is the shared lens of economic development. So looking at it through the lens of economic development. And I will use an example in the plan. There is a section on climate resiliency and wildfire. We reference the FireWise, the community-wide fire prevention plan, wildfire prevention plan. We're not saying that we're going to do that and lead that. What we are saying is that when FireWise and that plan and folks who are working on it stand up in front of, say, a policymaking body and asks for resources or help, we can hold this up and say, we're looking at this through economic development, and this is an economic development issue. Fire issue, absolutely. Public health and safety, absolutely. Property, yes. It is also an economic development issue, and economic development is not just brick and mortar, raising up, skyline and, pouring concrete. Economic development is about how are you getting things out of the way. The regulatory report that just came out that the Farm Bureau, helped support. How are we looking at things that aren't brick and mortar? That's not what economic development is. Economic development creates the jobs. Workforce development, puts people in those jobs. So that's what the stage that we're at right now, that, we really need to look at everything through that lens, because then it gives us more voices to stand behind one another and support those things.
It feels like one of the differences, and this is maybe what I was alluding to earlier that wasn't present before, is coordination and a cohesive strategy.
That's a good point.
Because it feels, and you can frankly walk around town and see it, there were one-off decisions made for various things.
And they kind of worked.
Some of it brick and mortar, some of it zoning, some of it, what people were calling economic development prior to this. Some of it may have worked, yes, but there's also, Main Street was not Main Street, and every building looked oddly placed next to every other building. And there's diversity, and that's one thing, but there's not continuity either. There has been some of that. And a couple decades ago, downtown was empty.
Right.
Every storefront was empty, and they had posters up in the windows to make it look like they weren't empty. And downtown used to flood every year. And so there have been developments that have been, and by the way, the whole county supported that to make sure that the city of Napa wouldn't flood every December.
Should remind Scott Sedgley.
In January and February. But this feels different and fresher because of the coordination. And it's not instead of the city staff.
No,
it's in addition
to,
with the city staff. And I don't think that was happening
Well, and we have a nonprofit that we can tap into, EDA funds or, things from GoBiz California that have resources in both staff and tools and potential funding that we could get to support the work that we're doing. So we're not in it alone, but that's why I go to these things too, because I want to make sure that I'm asking the questions. Where can we get those resources? How do I find my person who's the regional rep? But just to share it out there. And I think that this is going to keep going. I mean, this is not a one and done thing. This is an ongoing project and a process. And we didn't print 1 million pages of this thing. It's so that it can be completely dynamic and changed. And it's not going to sit on the shelf in a binder kind of thing.
So where do you think, because, I'm very mindful of time, you know me and time and diligence, but
time is a construct.
I know that I have no attention to, but in terms
I'll just sip on my wine right now.
In terms of Chambers of Commerce, so Jeri, what does the future look like for you all? Like, where do you see Chambers of Commerce going?
I can only speak for mine and ours. Where we're headed, though, is really more about creating those business to business connections, because business to business turns into B2C. And we are finding that it's a really unstable time right now outside of us, but people are realizing where they can really make the most connection and they can have the most effect and they feel most stable is standing right here where we are. And so they are coming to us and they are joining the chamber because they want to connect with other people in their community who are also in business. They want to support them. They want to do business with them. They want to look them in the eye. They want to see them at the supermarket. They want to see them at the kids' events, and they want to support their community and connect with people in their community. And so we've actually seen an uptick in membership because of that very reason. And our events that we do, which are still very important because these are social, but they're also, we know that a lot of business happens during social events. We're selling out. And so that is, that's an indicator to me that people are desperate for some connection. And
I think you're right, because I do think, like, I think it's 3 presidents that I've worked with now, or 4, and chambers of yesterday have morphed, right? But I do think you're onto something, that the personal connection matters. And I think we went through a phase of social media, artificial stuff, hide behind a keyboard. And I think people are going back to, like, I still need to know who my neighbor is. I still need to know who my business is. And I think the chambers of commerce are uniquely positioned to create a value proposition that's real. Not superficial shit, but like, if I give you $1,000 or $3,000 or $5,000, I don't need a return on $1, but I need the value of connectivity.
Right.
And hearing you talk today, to me, it's just, you created a vision of connection in relationships. And I think that's what people need.
I want to give you like a practical example or two to how this is playing out. I know when you like to comment when I get my haircut, and
you haven't got one lately.
In another week.
Well, I'm paying attention, John.
But so my stylist is a small business owner, and she's been working down. Her shop.
I know her, so I'm not going to.
Shop is downtown.
I know who you're talking about.
She has connected with concierge at hotels and other businesses that, stop staring at my hair.
I'm just trying to provide
other businesses that want to be able to tell their guests, oh, we want to get dressed up because we have this event we're going to,
blowout.
And they now know, call Maria.
Yeah.
Or Maria knows that she's talking to a client and they need some help with insurance. And they're like, well, I met Bernie at this thing, and you can go to him. And that's that human connection.
Which people want.
Instead of Googling it or AIing it to try to guess what's the right fit. And so it is the value of the networking and the business after hours and the mixers. Some of that matters, but then you have talked a lot already about the foundation of economic development, but then within that is that human interaction where Second Street, they've taken it upon themselves to
and the Clinton
create their own
area
things.
There's it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. We can still do those things. we can do those small things that add up to big things, with people to people and B2B and all of that. But we also have to do the things that are the 30,000 foot things that end up helping those
Correct.
small pieces move more smoothly together. And, starting with the businesses that we have now, how do we help them? And so that's kind of our take on it. But anyway.
And normally when I start the conversation, I start off by asking for some background, but Alfredo,
I didn't get to talk about any of the time when I was a princess.
I know.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you now.
Yes.
Because one of the things that we have stayed committed to.
How much time do we have? Are we out of time?
Yes, we are, John.
I got the watch.
No, you get bonus time. But
I got the watch.
What I want to acknowledge, first of all, is thank you for being our very first sponsor.
Yes,
That
this
you
is
were-
microphone.
you were
my microphone.
Speaking into the microphone that you purchased on our
I
behalf.
did. I
Thank
felt
you.
sorry for you.
Yeah, you should. She felt
I was
sorry.
like, oh my God, damn it. Just let me buy the
Yes.
fucking
Well, we were
microphone.
talking about having the capacity for a guest, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, we don't have a microphone. She stepped up.
Yeah.
And
I
also
did.
want to acknowledge Home Coffee and what Derek has done, but it's really about Mama Said.
Yeah.
They also have allowed us to use one of their hit songs as our theme.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Where are you going? with
Thank
this?
you for
Yeah,
your
I know.
sponsorship.
You're welcome.
But also, we like to share or have our guests share some of the personal background. And I know that since you've been living over 20 years in the Valley, but you've worked for Napa Valley Vintners,
Mhm.
Sustainable Napa County,
Mhm.
and prior to the chamber. So if you could just quickly, and also being from Healdsburg and
Mhm.
So structured, John.
I know.
Like we had just glossed over.
You just told it
I
already.
know.
but just quickly, because Caleb's going to run out of
Yes,
battery
I know,
power.
I know.
Jesus.
I grew up in a family that raised cattle. We raised Angus cattle, purebred Angus cattle. We went around to shows and expositions all over the Western United States. I grew up on ranches all over California, one time in Nebraska where my brother decided to be born.
I remember your
But
brother.
primarily grew up at the ranch in Healdsburg that was formerly owned by the actor Fred McMurray of My Three Sons. You would not know who that is.
Zero.
And
You don't have to edit that.
but is now owned by Gallo. You do know who that is. And so
It went from livestock to
it's called
grapevines.
Twin Valley Ranch, and it's one of their labels that they have. They make a Russian River Pinot Noir. But my grandfather was the manager of that ranch. And then we lived on that ranch while I was going to high school, graduated from Healdsburg High, went to Cal Poly. I studied fair management. I thought I wanted to be a fair manager. Yes, there was actually a class down there. I was ag policy, Cal Poly. Moved back to this area, and I had jobs at the San Joaquin Farm Bureau. I worked for the Lodi Woodbridge Wine Grape Commission, and then I wanted to kind of come back this way. Took a job with the Napa Valley Vintners as public affairs manager in 2000.
There's stories there.
In 2000, yes, it was so great because I also was kind of new to the community, but I got dove right in. Got involved in leadership Napa Valley my second year here, so I was now I had like all these new people that I knew. Then in 2008, we were working on the Napa Green program. It started with the Napa Valley Vintners and doing a winery program, a winery version of the fish-friendly farming, and doing Napa Green Vineyard and Napa Green Winery. And I was on a little group that was a sustainable committee through Gasser Foundation. It was called Sustainable Napa County. Well, then they realized that they needed to spin that off into its own organization. And so I was asked to run that.
And that was
in
before
2009.
sustainable.
That was when it was still kind of, what is that? And I'm not sure about climate. I don't want to say that word. So I took that over in 2009, and I was the CEO of Sustainable Napa County for about 12 years. And then by that time, it had started going more mainstream, and now it was being embedded in business plans and culture and city policy and county policy. And so the board and I made a conscious decision to dissolve the nonprofit.
You worked yourself out of a job.
Well, isn't that the job of every nonprofit?
couldn't
Is to
agree
work
more.
yourself
Should be.
out of a job.
Yeah.
You should, be at the point where you can say,
There's
I
a
feel like we
sunset.
did okay.
Yes.
And so we felt good about that, and it was conscious and it was positive. And so we didn't feel like we needed to keep a nonprofit around to keep raising money or to compete with
keep a
other
job.
nonprofits or to make work. So we dissolved it. I started my own firm in January 2020. And then March of 2020 happened, and the Napa Chamber of Commerce, Travis called me and said, can you help us with our government affairs? And so they were my first client, and I did that for 3 years. And then when Travis retired, I took over in January of 2023.
We're just going to edit that to the beginning
But
of the podcast.
But I also want to say one thing, that I was Western States Angus Queen. That is what I was trying. This is the only reason I came to this podcast, so I could share.
Dude.
I got to wear a leather sash and a tiara, and I got to go to shows all over the United States representing the Angus breed. It's kind of a big deal.
You married up, dude.
Yeah.
You married up.
I got to hold banners at the ass end of every grand champion. It was pretty exciting.
Killed.
What do you have to do to do it at the head end?
No.
You have to own it.
I want big bold letters. John married up. Like just flash that across the screen right
I thought it was John married a queen.
Yeah, well, there you go. But I will say.
Now you know my secret.
Have you been part of leadership Napa Valley? No, you haven't.
No.
I feel my 18 years of elected service has been
jaded
enough.
You to your wife.
And by the way,
and
thanks for enjoying your rosé.
Thank you for bringing the rosé.
Yeah.
Cheers.
This was fast.
Alfredo, what did you think about our conversation with Jeri?
Well, John, I feel you were conflicted, right? I think her and I had a great conversation. I'm glad you were there to participate.
I do want to acknowledge that now that it's after Easter and Lent, you're back to being able to enjoy cigars with me. I felt so guilty for a while there.
No, you didn't. You were blowing smoke in my face, John.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But I did have a cigar. I'm not going to say it was on Easter, but pretty close, plus or minus. But look, I thought Jeri did a great job. Look, I'm biased because I got to know her before I think I knew you. And I was actually curious, like, the value proposition of a chamber has to change, because it's not of a ribbon cutting to feel good and people that look like you go to chambers. I'm being candid. There's a different value proposition today, and I think she's delivering on that.
Yeah, I've been impressed with where she's taken the chamber from when because she was on the board of the chamber for years. She talked about how she had been brought in when Travis Stanley was still the executive director, CEO, president. And she's just built on that foundation.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to ask specifically about where are you finding all these resources? Because it's intentional and it takes extra effort to bring in those other resources, the experiences about other cities, other chambers, and apply them here for economic development. And I'm glad she also explained what she means by economic development. It's basically all things.
Yeah, and the wheels are coming back, John. I'm remembering the 40% that is attributed to business owners in the downtown. And I didn't want to say it in there because Jeri's a friend.
That's what the Downtown Association, not the chamber.
It is ridiculous, John, that our merchants downtown are paying 40% to an association, John. And it's not criticism of who's there. It's a criticism of maybe it's beyond its useful life and what can we do differently. And I think we've reached a point where you have to be honest with yourself. You and I sometimes work ourselves out of a job, John, because you do a good job. Organizations, nonprofits, associations should be as self-critical as everyone else. And that you're asking businesses to pay 40% on top of their business license so it funds a downtown association. I would be very curious to understand what the value proposition decision is and what the return on investment is, John.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the association was around at a very different time. And, unfortunately, too many people can remember when downtown Napa was empty. And also, like we talked about in the pod, it's a different dynamic, the fact that they're not having to recover from flood damage every year.
But to your point, it served a purpose, John, and I think I appreciate you bringing that up, right? Because once upon a time, it served a valuable purpose, right? When you had vacant storefronts, when downtown flooded, you were trying to revitalize downtown as redevelopment was happening, right? So in concert with redevelopment, it served a purpose. But in the moment of today, when you're trying to get businesses to survive, when you're having businesses compete, I think we owe it to ourselves to ask the question of, what's the purpose of it today? When you have Visit Napa Valley that's doing incredible work, when you have, as you heard from the Chamber of Commerce, that's redefining frontiers, does it still serve a purpose today? And I think we have to be self-disciplined enough to ask that question. And I don't think we are, John. And if I'm a business owner and this building is not part of downtown, right, thank God, or no one has reminded us, there has to be that question.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight again, going back to the chamber itself, is that people don't understand it's unique and that it does not get tourism dollars like all the other chambers in the county do, from American Canyon all the way up through Calistoga. And so that means it's more pressure on the membership, which is voluntary, to be a part of the chamber. And so what Jeri has done is she's identified how can she and the chamber best serve its members, because that's serving all of the local businesses we have. And it's not just downtown Napa, it's throughout the valley.
Well, and I want to give her credit, right? Because what Jeri has done is she's built a team, right? She's a great leader, but the people on her board are like-minded individuals that are trailblazers, that are not just there to add it to their resume, right? Their CV. They're there for an intentional purpose. Now, it's going to be on Jeri to take that to the next level, and she's well on her way to doing that. We saw the strategic plan she has in place. Now it's about executing and getting shit done for people that need it. And I have all the confidence in the world.
You're seeing and hearing in real time, like we've talked about for a year and a half, the kind of development that is happening downtown Napa now, because it is a dynamic place again. And so there is an opportunity now to keep building on that, but also doing it smartly, as she talked about, having an economic strategy, not just to do things different for different sake, or to change for change sake, but to do it smartly and in a coordinated way.
Yeah. You know, a good friend once told me, you have to be the right leader at the right time. And I believe that, especially over time. I think Jeri's the right person to be leading the Chamber of Commerce in this moment right now.
I can toast to that.
You should toast for that if you want to make sure you get home.